we have this combination of being big enough to have many competitors in each user problem, but also the population that is unserved is super big. So it's a very challenging market.
Are you ready to samba or perhaps party at Carnival? Welcome to Mobile Heroes Uncensored. My name is John Katsir. Of course, our co-host is Peggy Ann Salz. And guess what? We're kind of still on a road trip. We're kind of still in Brazil where we were last episode. Today, it's an origin story. We're going on a deep dive into a mobile hero's career. We might just talk a little bit about incrementality and other cool stuff as well. So we're going to go one-on-one with a mobile marketing expert. Peggy, who is our mobile marketing expert today?
Well, today, John, we have Guilherme Braz. He's an acquisition senior director at Mercado Libre, which is a very cool e-commerce fintech leader in Latin America. And you'll hear about it because it's also a super app. But keeping with Guy, before Mercado Libre, he worked at the gaming company Wildlife Studios as a UA director. And before that, very importantly, I think, Bain and Company as a consultant. So this is a man who gets into the weeds. Right? He's got
This is interesting, Peggy.
Yeah.
This is really interesting because we have a hardcore user acquisition mobile specialist who's been a Bain consultant, which, you know, you typically think of as the other end of the world, right? Slow, ponderous, you know, very detailed, expensive.
He may be expensive. We'll keep Guy expensive. But no, seriously, I like his mixture because he's got his right and left hemispheres really in balance here. Imagine an undergrad degree in applied mathematics, a master's degree in economics, and a long track record in management. It is just the mix, right, that it takes to run acquisition and win in 2023. So welcome, Guy. Great to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure talking to you today.
Wonderful. We are super pumped to have you. Guy, maybe tell us a little bit about Mercado Libre. We know the name. We've heard the name. The name is world famous. Don't necessarily know what it is exactly and what it all does.
So we are a leader in e-commerce and fintech spaces here in LATAM. So we started back in 1999 with, let's say, a local clone of eBay. And then it started evolving as a more mature marketplace. And then we realized that we had so many synergies with the fintech world. We started a wallet app that then evolved to like a full-fledged digital banking solution. And today we are a leader in the e-commerce space in most Latin markets and have a very relevant presence in some countries' leadership in the digital banking space as well.
That is super interesting. Peggy mentioned off the top about super apps. And we know, of course, that China has super apps, right? It's the do everything, live your entire life, buy everything, manage everything, control everything, communicate with everything. Is that where you are? Is that where you're trended? And why is that working in South America, where North America, we seem to be allergic to it?
I wouldn't say that we are there, but we have had a track record of adding functionality and adding solutions to customer pain points that end up being like relevant for huge chunks of populations here. So our main task, our vision is to democratize access both to commerce and to financial services here in LATAM. So we have a real big segment of the population that is unserved in both markets. And I believe that this ability to pick some problems and make scalable solutions is what has brought us here.
So you have arrived in a way because you're UA at a super app, but you're also a mobile hero. So it's quite a combination. I don't think we've had one like this come to
No, I don't think so. I think we got a first here.
Yeah, we got superpowers and a super app. So I have to ask, what is the one trait that has allowed you to succeed at all the stages of your career in the companies you've been at?
I think it's a genuine interest for the problems that we are tackling. So going deep into what is going on, why the customers have that problem, what would be potential solutions. And I think that this first principles thinking is very important in any position, in any situation. So you mentioned that my track record before Wildlife Studios is like super wide in terms of a different positions, from sales to pricing to be a consultant. And I think that the one thing that puts everything together is the interest of understanding the problems at hand and what would be the most efficient solution.
It's pretty cool. You kind of answered there because I was going to go. I think this is another first. I don't think we've ever had a Bain consultant or even like a top three
No.
consulting agency, consultant come and be a mobile hero and chat with us. So that's pretty cool. You have a super strong mathematics background. Talk about what you do now and how that background in math and as a consultant influences what you do.
Okay, so I'm in charge for the performance marketing teams in Mercado Libre and also the SEO team as well. I have a genuine interest for the problems at hand, and here the problem is how to serve the best possible ad to each person that we reach. So at this scale, this problem has many different dimensions that require analytical thinking. So there's a segmentation part, there is a ad serving part, there is a bidding part. All those different components of the problem end up being really analytical and require interactions either with engineers or data scientists. So having someone that is managing the operation but can deeply discuss solutions and problems with those teams, I think is something that really helps. So that's where
Very
this
cool.
connection, I think, of the background and my current role comes.
You make a really interesting point. It's all about analytics, but you are one of few, I would say, again, another first. This is just a show of firsts, John. We haven't had people so focused necessarily on product as well. And I've got to go back. I'm always researching, looking, reading your blog, right? You say, and I quote, hitting the KPIs comes second to having a great product. How many people say that, right? So why are you so convinced? How has this changed? How is this impacting your UA?
So I believe that UA is this activity of serving a good ad to a good person, and each person. So in the end of the day, it's very hard to make a good claim in an ad if you have a bad product, a bad solution. So I
Some people have no trouble with that at all.
yeah, coming from the mobile gaming industry, you see so many examples of that, right? So, but I honestly think that everything starts with a problem, and then your product has to solve that job. And that's why I think that hitting the KPIs is second, because if I were starting a company now, my first question would be, do I have product market fit? Am I solving a real problem? Then there is the question of how to scale the solution. So, and UA is more on that part of how to scale. And I think that if you have a poor product or a small addressable market, you end up with like expensive CPAs, and the unit economics won't
Mhm. Mhm.
fit, or for them to work, you have to like have a prices that will make your market shrink a lot. So I'm super convinced that even though my vertical is more UA, having a very good product is a foundational aspect of our activity.
Love it, love it, love it. I look forward to the Guy on Relationships book or product or app that comes out. Everything starts with a problem. And so I'm going to apply that in my own relationships, see how that works and see how far it gets me. We have to talk about Brazil. We started with Brazil.
Mhm.
Last episode, we were in Brazil as well. Talk about the app market in Brazil and how it's different. And, maybe I'll kick you off here. You said you're not quite a super app yet, but you've got some of the aspects of it. And you said, you're coming into a relatively new market. I wonder if that's the key, Peggy, for super apps like
Mm,
China, right? It exploded, and you got the super app coming in when there wasn't necessarily huge diversity of
yeah.
stuff. And I wonder if that's similar in Brazil. But tell us generally, Guy, about the app market in Brazil. How would you characterize it?
So I think it's a very competitive one, and also with a huge population with unserved needs, right? So on one hand, you have a bunch of people thinking of solutions of a specific problems. So, for example, in our digital banking app, for each of the components, like a wallet, payments, credit, uh, investment, you have so many competitors in each of the verticals trying to serve a particular segment in the market. So I think that we have this combination of being big enough to have many competitors in each user problem, but also the population that is unserved is super big. So it's a very challenging market,
Nice.
and also, I think that this is a population that is hooked in social media. So the number of hours that users spend on social media apps is high, very high compared to other countries. So, in one hand, this allows you to reach a very significant part of the population. And in the other hand, figuring out exactly who to target is a bit more difficult than in mature markets, I would say.
Interesting.
Hmm.
It's like a red ocean of competition against hard, tough competitors, but also a blue ocean for competition with unserved markets. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Makes sense
Hmm.
because they're
Cool.
just understanding and really embracing apps and smartphones. So you create this requirement, you create this need, but then there's no company that's sort of like overarching covers it. So you create this idea that, yeah, I can have it immediately. And it's like, yeah, but I want all of this immediately. And that's probably where the super app comes in.
Yeah, and I think that players
Go
like
ahead.
us have some benefit of having synergies of the offering in one business and the other business, and this creates some opportunities, like for example, to offer credit for people buying in our marketplace or selling in our marketplace as well. So we have some other synergies like these that allows us to have a broader ecosystem that I wouldn't say that is the same as the super apps in China, but serves a very broad range of necessities of our customers.
And of course, stitching that all together, you're seeing behavior and patterns across the different parts of your app. We know that Brazilians are passionate. We heard all about it, saw it with soccer. Do I need to say anything? Right. And
Football.
absolutely football. That's important. That's an important part of communications, social, very important channel to engage users. What works when you want to re engage your users?
I think that we need to first to have a message or value prop to deliver for those customers to re-engage. Then I think it's super important to have a channel strategy. So in our case, I have a peer that manages our own channels. So we try to make a strategy that prioritizes on channels, and then we go to paid channels. And finally, but not least important, I think is the matter of bidding correctly. So the re-engagement question comes very often, and I think that poorly designed approach makes the marketer pay twice for the same purchase or same customer activity. So it's very important to, when you are designing the bidding strategy, to take into account like what has already been paid for, what you're paying for this new, let's say, LTV bump. So this is something that is on the top of my head when thinking of re-engagement.
Love it, love it, love it. And you know what? We got to go there. You talked about it with Peggy in the pre-chat, incrementality, and you just brought it up. Say you don't want to pay twice for the same customer. You don't want to pay twice for the same purchase. Incrementality is a bigger and bigger thing. We've got Robin from Facebook. We've got a bunch of other methodologies of looking at that. And as we know less and less about what's happening device level
Mhm.
with ads that are going out there and user level with ads that are going out there, it becomes more and more important. How much are you using that right now? And what are your thoughts on the state of incrementality in general?
So we are experimenting with that. I think that we have some very good initial results. And we are testing different approaches for our MMM model, say the Robins of the road. We are testing some proprietary approaches, our own approach, Robin. So we're kind of looking for what would be the best fit, considering, and fit meaning how the tool adapts to some previous activity that we already have the source of truth, so to say. And then there is more in-depth question that is for a specific paid marketing stimuli. What is the response in terms of sales? And then we are using some Google, Facebook tools that allow us to make what is somewhat close to a randomized control trial. And when this doesn't fit, we go for something like an A/B that would allow us to have a sense of what is the marginal impact of our investment. Doing so, we understand the flaws of our attribution and helps us make much better informed investment decisions that we would have done otherwise.
It's so challenging, hey, because the universe is complex and your marketing is complex. And you said you're in, a very competitive market, but there's also unserved markets as well. And that's all mixed as
Mhm.
also. And so when you look at your results and you look at your incrementality, you've got to, okay, what are we doing? What are our competitors doing? What's happening in the world? Is there seasonality to what we're doing or is there not? All those things, and you've got to kind of manage that in a sort of a it's there's some art there and there's some science there, isn't it, in managing those parameters to understand what's impacting your
Yeah,
results, correct?
yeah, definitely. I think that all the different questions that you cited are super important. So when you talk about competitors, you always have the fear that you lose share of voice, that this will turn into fewer conversions. But if you trust, let's say, the experiment, you'd say, hey, uh, I'm wasting part of my budget, and then the question is like which part, right? You never know exactly how to
The
scale down
origin question of marketing.
or scale up, right? So uh,
Yep.
it's like I would say it's like a peeling an onion. Like you do a first very general test, you get some idea, then you start looking by channel. Then in our case, in marketplace verticals, so we figured out, for example, that we had like an overall inefficiency in the sense that we could have been spending less. But when we broke down by vertical, the story was very specific by vertical. So we could increase investment in some, reducing others. So I would say it's a journey that you apply the same concept in different granularity levels.
Nice.
I like the comparison to peeling the onion. I've got another
Yes, the glass
comparison.
onion, isn't it, Peggy?
Yeah, it goes on and on. Brings me to another comparison we had. Remember John Moshe Bloom? He was on our show last year and he described it as being, well, he's comparing it to heaven. And he said, everyone is speaking about it, but no one knows how to get there. That's what incrementality was for him. So how close are you feeling to heaven, Gui?
I'm still far. But
No Halo yet.
yeah, but
Not even at the pearly gates.
yeah, yeah. In when we take a look and like we still need a multi-touch attribution for like the daily decisions that the team makes, and when we see the distance of this attribution to what is like, let's say, the true incrementality, we feel far. And with all those complications of user level data obfuscation, of seasonalities that change the incrementality results, we have still so much room for improvement. We are in our
Mhm.
first steps. What I would say is that it pays off to treat the attribution model as a proxy to reality and not as reality itself,
Mhm.
because it isn't.
Yep.
So I think
Yep.
that this is the big takeaway for us in this beginning of the journey, is to understand that we use a proxy to reality to operate, and challenging it increases your level of knowledge of what is working, of what is flawed, and it's a constant iteration of this knowledge, either be it in doing the experiments, understanding what is your best estimate of incrementality, but also in updating and improving the attribution model.
That's a very sophisticated way of looking at it. And I think it's the only way to look at it as you go forward, because you are going to still want whatever near real time optimization signals you can get from attribution tools, whether on iOS, that's SKAd Network, whether that's, GAID on Android, and eventually Privacy Sandbox and all those other things, whether that's your own in-app signals,
Mm-hmm.
which are still which are perhaps most important because those. Yeah, that's first party data. You've got that. And then, of course, that longer term stuff, that allocation type data that you're going to get from incrementality. I was going to make a joke earlier because you're saying we're not there. It's very complex. It's job security for consultants. You'll never get there. It's there's no heaven to reach. It's always a journey. And you know what? You're always just trying to find out which dollars am I wasting. It's the age old question of marketing that has been around for 150 years, Peggy.
Absolutely. So we need to be consultants, John. More so
Yeah,
than
We
we
what,
are.
currently are.
We
Yeah,
just
more
do it
so than we
at
currently are. We
a
have the
long
answer.
distance.
Absolutely. But I have to say though, you have to look at Gui's blog because it looks very scientific. You feel so secure when you look at it. There's graphs and it's like, yeah, I can do this. I've got this. And I have to ask as a follow-up question, because all the marketers I speak with, and maybe the same for you, John, this is so far out of their comfort zone to get comfortable about working with incomplete data or a proxy for attribution. How do you do that? What do you say to yourself or even your team? Because that is a different mindset.
that's definitely a huge challenge, because the first time we're going to do it, we have an optimization tool that calculates the bids, sends to Google, to Meta, to lift off the updated bids. And then out of a sudden, we're like, hey, we're going to have to override the decisions of this black box
Mm-hmm.
of ours because we know something that is still not there. So it generated a lot of questions from the team. And if you think it's like a very counterintuitive, because it's so common that a performance marketing teams have as goals the attributed sales, right? And out of a sudden, we're saying, hey, the attributed sales, we're going to slash it by X% because it makes sense for the business, even though it is against our, let's say, goal, the goal that is in everyone's bonus. So I kept getting the question like, hey, and the bonus, how is going to be in the end of the year? Like, hey, we do the right thing for the business. We'll figure this out. So definitely it takes a lot of change management, attention to change management to make this happen.
And the Bain consultant comes out right there.
Yeah, my past
But no, that's all good.
chases me forever, Joe. I don't know what to
All our paths chase us, especially when we're on video. Um, but Peggy, it was a great question, and the reality is that marketers have to abandon. We always knew last click attribution was fake. We always knew the world was more complex than that. We always knew it wasn't the last touch, that it was the conversation you had that didn't show up electronically, didn't show up digitally, didn't have a trail, no breadcrumbs, right? It was somebody who showed you on the train, or you peered over somebody's shoulder or something like that. Every decision humans make is complex. It's overdetermined. It's got multiple dimensions to it. And by just saying, oh, the last click is everything, that was fake, and we always knew it if we were honest with ourselves. And so that's still critically important, because that is a really important part of the process, but it's only part. And I think that's what we're discovering as we go into media mix modeling and incrementality. Anyways, Guy, we're having a great time. This is wonderful. It's incredible. But does it have to come to an end? You've got a job. Apparently you have to go back to it. I don't know. I have to do other things. And Peggy has to have her glass of wine and go to bed. She's in Germany and it's late there. What is your what's that?
So it's not that late. We can still have a little fun. But no, we do have to wrap. We do have to wrap.
We do have to. Guy, we ask everybody, what is your least censored opinion about mobile marketing?
Well, I think this one that we were talking about, to not trust attribution as a source of truth, and don't take things for granted. Be curious about the underlying processes that you're running. It's so easy, to be just optimizing whatever number, and for outsiders, everything is so opaque and hard to understand. So I would say that it's kind of possible to get away with hey, I'm doing a great job, I'm optimizing this, I improve it, whatever. But then when it push comes to shovel, for the business, you're not making a difference. You are just pretending you are doing something. So go to
exactly
the ground truth. I think is super important.
You're creating local maximums, right, in your process, which may not align with what the business actually needs at the end. Final question before Peggy wraps us. Give us one tip. If somebody wants to come to Brazil, they want to launch their app there, they want to make a splash, give them one tip.
I think that having localized content and localized ads, I think is a critical if you are to take an app from elsewhere to Brazil or to other countries. You have so many specificities. So localize not only the ad but also the product experience, I would say, is a must.
Awesome.
Agree. This was really not just fun. It was fun, but also a learning experience. We heard about super apps. We learned about your superpowers, and something I really appreciate, hard truths, some tough love about attribution. What do you want more? Great show to wrap. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you, Guy. Have a great day.
You too.
And thank you to all listeners. We really do appreciate you. Hope you're enjoying it. Let us know on social if you are.
And let us know if you want to come, and we'll have you on the show. If you're a mobile hero or you know of someone who is, then fill out the interest form over at shorturl.at/JKSKT.
Also, Liftoff has a Slack for mobile heroes and people in the mobile ecosystem. There's a link on the screen, and if you're listening to the podcast, it's at info.liftoff.io/Slack-sign-up. It's pretty cool. There's smart people there, and you know what? They probably need you too.
And you have probably been completely blown away by all the insights on this show, and you want your transcript, and you can have it because the transcripts are over at Liftoff's website. Go to liftoff.io, click on Heroes, and then click on Podcast.
I actually personally love transcripts because I read way faster than people talk. So that's a great way to get insights really, really quickly. Until next time, this is John Katsir. Thank you so much for joining.
And this is Peggy Ann Saltz signing off for Mobile Heroes Uncensored.